How about now, Jim? Have you been telling me that I've been recording for 7 minutes without audio? I mean, that's what learning how to live stream is all about, right? How about now, Jim? I hope you guys can hear me. Well, shoot. What now? You guys didn't hear a single thing I've said since the beginning, so that's interesting. So I'll just start over. Welcome to Tripping Through Transformation, this special live streaming episode. And as you can see, things are bound to kind of just happen because I don't really know what I'm doing. I'm figuring this out on the go. But what I was trying to explain is a little bit about how I got started with this podcast. And perfect. Thank you, Jim. And Jim, if at any point you want to show your face and come talk with me on this episode, I would love that, because talking to myself is not really my strongest thing. But I'll gladly do it. If you guys are trying to ask some questions, that works too. So what I was saying, live episode, first time doing live stream, figuring this out on the go, but we'll get there. So what got me started on Tripping Through Transformation? I always like to start with 2016 because it's kind of the easiest starting point for me. The Fort McMurray wildfires. I'm not going to get into the whole spiel about it. You know, I've talked about it in my other episodes, but I just want to give you guys kind of an overview as to what got me started and then what I learned through this process of hosting a podcast and talking to guests and things like that. So just quickly to do a brief overview, my name is Guillaume Poirier. I was born and raised in the province of Quebec. You know, I went to private school growing up just through pure fortune, I guess, through really my grandmother's I don't know, foresight, I guess is probably the best way to say it. Her foresight and just her desire to provide better circumstances for her family. When she passed away when I was 6 years old, she left behind $2,000 and told my mom to use that toward my education. So my mom took that money and put me in private school for 4 years. And then we moved to Alberta when I was 10, and we kind of restarted life over, my mother and I. It was just the two of us, started over in Alberta. We didn't speak English, but you know, we made it work. I moved out when I was young, when I was 18, started out of high school. I was a young father at 21. Actually, when I was months before my first daughter, Winter, was to be born, my partner and I, their mother, were actually homeless and like living in a basement of her aunt's house, just trying to find a place of our own, trying to make things happen so that we could get our family established. So we went through that struggle. I went back to school, studied power engineering, got hired by Suncor Energy, first as a coker technician and then as a power engineer. Did that for 15 years. And 2016 is when everything kind of flipped over on its head for me. We had the Fort McMurray wildfires. So just briefly, that morning when I woke up on May 3rd, 2016, you know, it was just another day for me, sort of. I say sort of because my girlfriend was leaving me that day, and I was also waking up to go write an exam. So I had like stuff happening, but I never thought that by the end of the day, you know, I would be camping on the side of the highway with my former girlfriend and trying to figure out what's happening in my life right now. So yeah, May 3rd, 2016, we had the Fort McMurray wildfires. I was one of the many people who lost their homes. That just led to a custody dispute between the mother of my children and I. She relocated to Edmonton, which is 5 hours away. I stayed in Fort McMurray. That lasted for 2 years. After 2 years, in 2018, I moved into my rebuilt home. I thought things were going to start to kind of go back to normal. You know, court was behind us. We were moved back into our home. We were starting to get furniture and, you know, appliances and really get our life back on track. And then in the end of that year, my fiance and I separated. And being a single income household, I couldn't maintain my mortgage and maintain my child support payments and all my bills. And so I told the bank I couldn't afford to make my payments, and they foreclosed on my home. So, you know, although I spent 2016 to 2018 fighting for custody of my children because I didn't have a home anymore, I still ended up kind of losing custody. So that was really rough for me. It was a financial blow, obviously, going to court. You know, lawyers aren't cheap. Lost my home, lost my savings, lost my car, I just lost everything. And I just went to a depression and anxiety and all these things, right? Tried all the drugs, medications that the doctors provided, did counseling, did all those things, having some mixed results. And eventually I decided that I would try medical marijuana because none of the pharmaceuticals were working. Not within a month or two did I try smoking medical marijuana. I was pulled aside at work for a random drug test. I failed. Again, I'm going to skip a bunch of details here just because I don't want to take up 3 hours just talking about drug testing and stuff. But failed the drug test. They sent me for a drug abusement assessment. Says I'm not a drug addict, so that was good. They told me go back to work, but you have to follow these rules. And one of the rules was that I had to follow my physician's instructions. Well, my physicians all wanted me to consume cannabis. My employers did not. So for 7 months, it was kind of like a pissing match between the company and I, where, you know, my doctor says I should do this, but they don't want me to do that. And I was not being treated for anything. And after 7 months of this back and forth, I consumed cannabis another time, got pulled aside for another drug test, failed again, and then I lost my job. So I'd say that like the fire was the pivotal moment that kind of flipped everything on its head, and losing my job was just the nail in the coffin. At that point, I didn't know what to do with myself. I was lost, and yeah, I was just a very angry, lost person for a while. That being said, I did see an opportunity. Now, this was in the midst of COVID, right? So I knew that finding work would be somewhat difficult because nobody was hiring. Although I did have a brief stint as a lubricant salesman for 6 weeks, door to door. We're not getting into that, but all to say that I knew it was going to be challenging to find work during COVID. And I always knew that I wanted to have a business at some point. I just never had the opportunity, nor did I know what I wanted to do. So I said, screw it. Now's your chance to get into lighting, right? Lighting. I like lights. Why not make a business out of it? So I reached out to a friend, and that's kind of where things kind of picked up from there. And then one day I created an Instagram page, kind of trying to promote my services. And I was approached by an entrepreneurship coach in Fort McMurray. And that's where like things really started to pick up for me, like on the upswing, right? I started to take coaching. I joined an organization in Fort McMurray called Startup YMM, and they help entrepreneurs launch their business. So I took workshops with them. I did some networking. I got connected, and yeah, things kind of started picking up. I was learning things. I was making connections, and I don't know. My whole perspective wasn't as negative anymore, right? I had something to look forward to. In May of 2023, I was connected with Ian Hill. Now, I feel weird talking about Ian, like the whole NGBN story. Some people, I don't know, they seem to not like it when I bring up his name, but it's just a fact of life that he's been a part of my journey for the last 2 years, good or bad. So I'm going to mention it. In May of 2023, I connected with Ian Hill. At the time, Ian was just a man in his late 50s who was trying to raise awareness for men's suicide, right? Mental health and suicide awareness. And he was working on becoming the oldest man to play college football. And I got in touch with him, and for about, I don't know, 6 or 7 months or so, we just exchanged texts just of support. We just kind of stayed in contact. And I might be getting my dates a little mixed up here. I think that was in 2022. I'm sorry. Because in 2023, that's when I joined NGBN Surviving to Thriving conference. And then I connected with all these other guys, you know, Chris Rubio, Charles Wallace, Brian Jodas, Chris Fontana, all these guys. And yeah, these guys kind of became my support group and mentors. And we, you know, they would do presentations and they would give us tips, and I had access to them if I had questions, concerns, comments, things like that. They were just like a support group. And I worked with them for a few months. And then by June of 2023, Ian said, you know, you're interacting with the guys, you're part of the group. how would you like to kind of join the circle? And I said, yeah, of course I'd be interested. You know, I believe in what you guys are doing. I believe in your mission. And if I can contribute, I'd love that. So he got me started doing, you know, social media posts and things like that. And by September of 2023, he said, you know, how would you feel about having your own podcast? And so at the time, very introverted, shy, lack of self-confidence, you know, the idea of having a podcast, being on camera, talking to people was not really something that was appealing to me. But early on, I had told Ian that I wanted to be a public speaker. I wanted to be a philanthropist, that I wanted to, you know, have an impact on people. And in order to do that, well, I have to develop certain skills. And I thought that having a podcast, well, I still do think that having a podcast helps me develop those skills. And that's why I jumped on and decided that, yeah, I'll have a podcast and share a little bit. So I don't see any questions coming up yet. So I'll just keep on talking. I think, Jim, I think you are my only viewer, buddy. So thank you so much for the support. So yeah, so in September 2023, I launched the first episode of Tripping Through Transformation. And now that we're going to get into a bit of the episodes, I'm just going to quickly just share my screen just so you guys have a bit of visuals to kind of go by. Because I want to go over the transformation that I went through. And I kind of want to talk a little bit about some of the learnings I got from some of my guests. So let me see if I can figure this out here. I got to go share screen, window, no, Chrome tab. Here we go. So I guess I got to go over here. Yeah, so my first episode was just me kind of just talking about my journey, about the fires and all of that. I went over that a little bit earlier today. So I'm not going to get back into it, but it was a really challenging thing for me to do. I mean, it took me 8 hours to record my first episode. I had to put on noise canceling earphones to try to keep focus. Like, that's how stressed out I was about just being on camera, right? I really struggled. So that first episode for me was kind of like a pivotal moment where I was hoping to demonstrate how bad of a job I was doing so that you could see me evolve over time, right? See not only the episode evolve, but also see my skills and my confidence and all that stuff evolve over time. So it's a very raw episode to watch, and it gets very personal. The next one is Ian. So that was episode 2. I kind of briefly went over my history with Ian. What ended up happening though is that, like I said, let me get this right. In January 2023, I joined the Surviving Thriving conference. By September, I had the podcast, right? So then by May of 2024, all senior content creator wanted each to know that they were jumping ship and they were leaving. And so, you know, we held a meeting kind of to discuss what was happening, and I didn't really agree with some of the things that happened and were said in that meeting, so I decided to step away too. But I still have mixed feelings about Ian and the whole NGBN thing. I don't know. Some people have strong opinions, and I'm kind of on the fence still. I don't know. Again, so this is kind of an area that's kind of weird for me to talk about, but it's just it's just a fact. Next, I had Diana Noble. So Diana was my first coach. She's the coach that I mentioned. My first coach in Fort McMurray that I had. She's an entrepreneurship coach. She's I think she has. Oh, Jim just asked me if I ever go back and watched old episode. So funny thing, Jim. The first few episodes, I couldn't bring myself to watch them. I would play them, and like at the time, I had my girlfriend maybe watch them for me. I might listen in another room, but I couldn't even bring myself to watch my old episodes. Now I do, because I mean, I do some editings and I clip them and stuff. I do rewatch them now, but initially I didn't even feel comfortable listening to my own voice or seeing myself on camera. So I hope that answers your question. But yeah, but that, so back to Diana. Diana reached out to me out of the blue one day and just said, "Hey, are you new business? You know, I love to help new business get started." And I said, "Yeah, I am." And you know, I hired her. She was my coach, and that's what really got me started on my coaching journey, as in like to be coached. Right? I've had probably 5 or 6 coaches since, but she is the one who started it. And although she hates it when I say this, because she is an entrepreneurship coach, and I struggle with that word, entrepreneurship. She is an entrepreneurship coach, but I consider her to be my life coach, just because of the timing when she came into my life and the impact that she had on me. You know, a lot of the things that I learned from her that's around entrepreneurship, I could apply into my own life. And so Diana was really like that first coach that really started to shift my whole mindset and perspective and my attitude. Um, Next, I had Oak, and Lieutenant Colonel Oak, retired Army Lieutenant Colonel Oak McCulloch. He came on, and he's a former, obviously, Army officer, but he also wrote a book on leadership, and he came on and we discussed leadership. And my favorite lesson that I got from Oak and from reading his book is that at one point he discusses how he has a meeting with one of his superiors, and he tells him about this ambitious project that he has, and his superior basically laughs at him and says, that's not possible, right? And I asked him, well, how did you feel at that point, you know, sharing that idea with your superior and then having him laugh in your face? But then Oak not only went ahead and did it anyways, but he did even better than what he expected. So I asked him, like, how did it feel to then go back and kind of, you know, say to your superior, hey, I told you I could do this, right? So again, Oak was a very interesting guest to have on, and I really recommend you guys check out his book. I'm seeing I'm getting messages from LinkedIn here, but they're not coming up on my live stream, so I don't know. Next guest was Rick Brown. Rick was my first live guest. He's the first guy I ever had like face to face, and had in studio. I don't really have a studio. My studio is actually my bedroom. My bed is just off to my right. But you know, Rick's a friend of mine. He came down and we talked about a project that we were working on together, a local project called The Venue. It was a nonprofit. We were trying to build a performance stage where people in town could come and you know, perform and do various things, but that didn't really pan out. So, but it was still great to have Rick come on and have that first experience with him, just to have a public, you know, sorry, not public, but have a in-person interview, which is what I'm hoping to eventually work towards. I don't really like to do the whole Zoom. I feel like there's a whole disconnect with this computer screen and the camera and stuff. Like, I just like to have a conversation with somebody in the same room. So that's what I'm hoping to work towards. Who did I have next? I think I had Ed, Sub 60 Ed. So Ed's been a repeat guest, and he is the director of, or the producer, sorry, of Decades, a show that he does with Chris Rubio, or at least he used to. The shows have split off now. But I love having Ed come on because Ed is very committed to the mission. Like, Ed is always talking about mental health, suicide prevention, and being there for, you know, your brother and supporting one another. And whenever I have Ed come on, I can almost guarantee that's what the conversation is going to be on, or we're going to just kind of talk about life. You know what I mean? So it's very laid back conversations whenever Ed comes on, and I just love having him come as a guest. And of course, you know, who did I have next? No, so these aren't all in order, but that's okay. After Ed, I think I had Rubio on next. So Rubio is another double repeat guest. Rubio has been great. If you guys watch Rubio's show, Rubio is very raw. He says it like it is, and he's not afraid to say, "Oh, well, some people like me, some people don't. That's okay. I'm all right with both." You know, he is who he is, and he stands for it, and that's something that I've learned from him. Oh, I see that Snowman has joined in. Hey, Snowman, how's it going? We'll get to Snowman in a little bit. Snowman was a guest on my show. Sorry, now I lost my track of thought. My track of thought. Oh, Rubio. Yeah, so Rubio's been a source of, he's a guy I go to for authenticity, for confidence, and he's really been a good source of support for me. We exchange texts all the time, we communicate, and he's always checking up on me, which I really appreciate. And I definitely recommend you guys go check his show. He covers recent events mostly, but he always does it with humor. So it's a great show to watch. Just gonna take a quick sip here. So this next episode here, I might get into a little bit more because this kind of shares a little bit about my struggles in the past year and what I've been struggling with. But next episode was with Jenna, and this episode is episode 9 or 10. I think episode 9. This came right around the time when my girlfriend and I separated. And more than just that, like this was around the time when I'd had a family argument and I'd punched a hole in the door. And as a result of that, the Ministry of Children and Family Development, or Child Protective Services, came to my house. And it was a very stressful time. I mean, just from what I have just told you guys about, like all the fighting I've been doing for my girls, since they were born. But custody battle for 2 years, and then losing him when I lost my home to foreclosures, and then fighting to get them back, right, to get a place for them to come and live with me again. All the fighting I've done for my daughters my whole life, or their whole life, I should say. And then to have Child Protective Services come to my home, that was the lowest point I'd say ever of my life, because it is so not, it's so far removed from who I see myself as being as a person. Have Child Protective Services come to my home, that that was a big blow for me, and that kind of sent me spiraling. And then I'll get into that a little bit later, but like October of last year, recently, I did Sober October, and it brought me back to the previous year, and I kind of spiraled, and that's why I haven't recorded a show for all these months. It's just I just haven't been in the right mindset to do it. And even now, if I'm honest with you, I don't feel like I'm in the right mindset to be doing this right now either. Like I still feel like I'm struggling, but I have to do it. Otherwise, I'm just gonna, fall off the track, and then this will never get done. And then my visions and my goals and my dreams are never gonna be materialized. So, although if I'm honest with you, like right now, I'm struggling, and I don't really feel like I'm in the right mindset to be doing it, I still feel like it's worth doing, because these moments of vulnerability and stuff, like these raw moments, I think there's value in there, and there's learning experiences, right? Like just to briefly go over like why, part of the reason why I feel like I'm not in the right mindset. Well, just not long ago, like just a week ago, and my daughter was really sick, and like to the point where the local hospital couldn't help her, and she had to go out of town, and I wasn't in a position to take her to the hospital because I don't have a functioning vehicle. So that kind of brought it home to me, like, holy crap, like look at how far you've gone as far as like being able to provide for your own kids now. Like, you can't even drive them around, you can't even take them to the hospital. And while that was happening, my godmother passed away. And then I was wrestling with that because, to be honest, I didn't feel like I felt enough sadness for her passing. And I wrestled with why. And then I came to realize is that I just don't know my family. Like I have two big families, both on my mom and my dad's side. My grandmother had 9 children on my mom's side, and on my dad's side, they probably had around the same amount, 8 or 9 kids. And I don't really know anyone. I don't know my aunts. I don't know my cousins. I never got to know my grandparents. So for this past week, I've been struggling with the fact that, my family, my aunts and uncles, they're all getting older, and they're getting closer to passing away. And as that happens, I'm gonna never have had the opportunity to know them. So yeah. So even like right now, as I'm saying this, I'm kind of holding back some emotions, because it's something that I've been struggling with for this week. So, but yeah. So anyways, to go back to a recap of the episodes, my episode with Jenna was just another really raw episode where I shared what I was going through, and she shared some of her experiences. She shared her experiences with EMDR and how that impacted her. And it was just a good episode, I think. Okay, now just to kind of regain my composure, I think we're on to like episode 10. Who did I have on for episode 10? You know what? I have a list right in front of me. I don't know why I'm not even looking at it. So Jenna was episode 8. MD and Chef. Great. Loveliest couple I've ever had the pleasure of. I don't want to say meet because I haven't actually met them in person, but getting to know through I don't know, through networking and through NGBN and just through what we're doing for mental health and suicide prevention. Lovely couple, very knowledgeable. Isabel is a doctor and Michael is a chef, and together they're like your full on health, I don't know, repertoire, answers, catalog, whatever. If you have any health questions, they can answer pretty much anything. Yeah, when Michael and Isabel came on, I believe we discussed the importance of sleep, and we talked about the circadian rhythm and how, you know, artificial lighting impacts our sleep patterns and things like that. And we covered a bunch of things, but there's always very valuable health information to be had whenever these guys come on. So again, that's Michael and Isabel. They're from the MD and Chef team show, and I really recommend that you guys watch them if you have any questions about health or nutrition. They're your source. Jessica Vanderhoek was my next. So yesterday I was on Decades with some of the guys, and Rubio jumped on and asked me if I ever had a favorite episode or a favorite guest. And I'd have to say my favorite episode would have to be Jessica, just because we discussed psychedelics and psychedelic assisted therapy. Just to talk a little bit about, for me, where psychedelics have an impact on my life. I've been anti-drugs most of my life, like very strict, you know, went to private school, grew up around the whole this is your brain on drugs thing. And even as a teenager, when I was around my friends, if they were smoking weed and they offered it to me, I always passed up on it. Like, that's how strict I was. But of course, no, I don't know why I said but of course. In my early 30s, I was introduced to mushrooms, and I was hesitant at first, but I said, yeah, you know what, live a little. You're in your 30s now, you know, you can make your own decisions, so why not try? And I tried it. And at first it was just a recreational thing. You know, it just made watching Netflix more interesting, watching UFC fights better. It made for more interesting conversations with my partner. But there were times when I also would do the mushrooms, like after the fire, for example, and I started to see benefits. It would calm me down. It would help me see things through different perspectives. It would, I don't know, give me hope. It would just, I don't know, it would just, I really can't, I'm struggling to find the word. It would just change my perspective, I guess. Really, it's, I don't know, it's really the best way I could put it. It just really helped me. And I'll share this with you. This is probably one of my most extreme psychedelic experiences that I had, but this was happening right, you know, after my home had burnt to the wildfires, and I was in the process of, you know, working with insurance to kind of figure out how much money I was going to get back, and I was also going to court at the time, and it was just a lot happening. And one night I did mushrooms with my partner, and a few hours in, you know, I kind of just sat up in the bed and I started to hyperventilate, and I was crying and I was sobbing, and she just looked over at me and she said, you know, what's going on with you? Like, are you okay? And to me, what it felt like at the time was, it felt like dark energy or like black smoke kind of just leaving my body. And it was overwhelming. Like I said, I was shaking, I was sobbing, crying, and hyperventilating, but it was also euphoric. Like, it felt like pain and sadness and all these negative emotions and feelings were just exiting my body. So maybe that's the best way that I can kind of explain it to you. Like, not all my psychedelic experiences have been like that. That's one of the more extreme ones. But yeah. So that was kind of my introduction to psychedelics. And like I said, I had a friend who knew a guy who knew a guy, and I got connected that way. And what started as initially kind of a recreational thing eventually became kind of like a way for me to cope, I guess. So So yeah, so and Jessica herself, she shares her story about how she went to Mexico and did ayahuasca and a bunch of these other psychedelics, and how basically she was on the brink of suicide when she started these treatments, and then she came out on the other side like a totally different person. So this episode with Jessica, just because of the topic, is my favorite, just because it's closest to my heart, and I do value the benefits of psychedelic assisted therapy, even though I myself have not done the assisted therapy. Like, I've only done mushrooms on my own, but I do believe that if you have a professional helping you, kind of guiding you through it, there has to be benefits, because I've had benefits on my own. So, but yeah, again, if you're curious about psychedelics, that is the episode that you want to watch. After that, I had Dave Bradley come on. Dave is a former, I don't watch football, so I hope I say this right, but former Manchester United football player. I hope I got that right, because I'm so used to saying soccer here in Canada. So I want to make sure I don't offend anybody by saying soccer. But a former football player from Manchester, is from England, and currently he's just an entrepreneur. And he came on and shared some entrepreneurial advice, and he shared some of his background and his story too, of how, one of the favorite clips I have, I think he was looking for work, and in the clip he says, I made the call, all they could do is say yes or no. And it's just such a small snippet, such a small line, but it's always sat with me. Like, the worst they could do is say yes or no. So that, again, like I said, that sat with me, and I always remember, try to remind myself that now whenever I have to reach out to somebody, maybe ask for something. Dave pops into my head. The worst they can do is say yes or no. So anyways, again, Dave's got an interesting story, and he gives you a lot of great advice. And yeah, Dave also takes part in our meetings. The NGBN content creators, we've kind of went off and started doing our own thing, and we're all still in touch, and Dave's always got great advice. So I'm very thankful for having him come on the show. Brian Snowman, I don't know if you're still on, Snowman, but you were my next guest, and I loved having you on, dude. You were very raw, very open, very honest about your battles with cancer and what you're trying to achieve. I have a lot of respect for you. And I have to say that, being the guy who kind of, I don't know if I'm the guy who brought you onto NGBN, but I kind of see it that way. And to then see NGBN kind of fall apart, I do feel some accountability to you. Like, I do feel bad that happened. And brother, I really do hope that you and I and everybody else that's working on this mission of, raising mental health awareness and preventing suicide, that we all get to where we want to be and make the changes and have the impact on people that we want to have. So folks, if you guys want a raw, authentic, and emotional story about, surviving cancer and life struggles, I would really recommend checking in my interview with Brian Snow of Snowman Multimedia. Snowman's got his own show too, Snowman in the Morning, so you should check that out. Absolutely. Randy Chevrier, my brother from Calgary. Where are you? You're down there. So for those of you who don't know, Randy is a former football player for the Edmonton Eskimos. Yeah. Did you play for the Stampeders too, Randy? I don't know. I know that you played for the Calgary Eskimos, right? Or the Edmonton Eskimos. See, I am not a sports guy, but it's okay. Randy understands. But Randy came on and he shared his story of his adversity. So Randy shared with us that while he was training for his football season, he actually got stabbed, and he was told to take it easy, to not train, because it could do more harm than good. And he would secretly go and train at various gyms throughout town to try to stay in shape without people knowing and catching on, so that he could still make the team and still play. So Randy went on to win 2 Grey Cups, I believe. So needless to say, he did what had to be done to win, right? Now, if I understand right, Randy is working with the fire department in Calgary, and he's got his own show with Sheldon called The Ride with Chev and Nasty. So they talk about sports, they talk about, current events, they talk about brotherhood, and they do 300-pound poetry, which is great. So you guys should definitely check them out as well. Yeah, that was Randy. Alex on tech. Alex is one of our brothers from decades. Alex's story was interesting. Alex is from Ukraine, back when it was the former, Soviet Union, USSR. And he talked about what it was like living under, communism and the threat of, the Americans are going to drop atomic bombs on us and all that stuff. So we talked about the war between Russia and Ukraine, and got his perspective and my perspective. So it was an interesting conversation. I hope we get to see a ceasefire soon, and that this conflict comes to an end sooner rather than later. But it was interesting to talk about, and getting to hear the story coming from somebody who's actually lived in that country. It's really interesting, man. And then I'm down to my last guest, which was Adam Colazetti. Adam is from Enta Solutions, and if I get this right, I believe it's like a workplace culture company to help companies, I guess, improve efficiency and culture. Best way to put it. But he came on and we talked about workplace culture. We talked about meditation and storytelling and things like that. Adam has a show called Veritas, which is meditative stories. And I enjoy them. One of the things that I told Adam, to be honest, is that I discovered that while listening to his meditative journeys, that I struggle to relaxing to like a male voice, right? Like in meditation. And that was a discovery that I made listening to his podcast. And I dug a little deeper. And I mean, I'm not a professional, I'm not a psychiatrist, but for me, I think it just comes from I've had bad circumstances with guys where I don't really trust them. And for me to like go into a meditative state and to be put under using a male voice, I don't know, it just didn't sit well with me. So I told him that, and I actually made a point to watch his episode and try to kind of get myself accustomed to listening to guys, because I know that, my experiences don't define how every guy is, right? Just because I had a run in with a few bad apples doesn't mean that all the apples are bad. So I'm trying to kind of reprogram myself to be able to listen to males tell stories or to do meditation stuff. So that's kind of been a recap of, all of the guests that I've had on. I've done a lot of learning from these guys. Obviously, I have a lot of growing left to do. I have a vision for Tripping Through Transformation that's beyond what I'm currently capable of doing, just because I don't have the skills, I don't have the equipment, the money, the time. This is something that I'm doing aside from my job, aside from focusing on being a better dad, aside from focusing on my fitness and my health and try to improve my finances and all this thing. So this podcast doesn't get as much attention as I'd like it to. It's always something that I feel like I'm kind of just rushing and throwing out there. But that's just the way life is right now. And, I got to do it to get better. So whether it's rushed, it's unpolished, it's clean, I stumble, I stutter, I fart, it is what it is. But, obviously my vision for Tripping Through Transformation, for those of you who are interested, is to, if you're familiar with the shows, so okay, I know I'm jumping all over the place. This is what happens when your brain never stops and you've got like 100 thoughts jumping in, all saying, pick me, pick me, pick me, pick me, pick me, all at the same time. That's what happens. But so I have a vision for the show where I cover healing stories. So people's stories, healing places, healing practices, psychedelics, and then get professional advice. So those are my 5 Ps. And, I've always liked the show Hamilton's Pharmacopoeia. I don't know if you guys are familiar with it, but he kind of goes over all the different drugs, how they're made, how they affect the body, things like that. And oftentimes, like, he'll even try them himself, and he'll kind of give a report on his experience and this and that. So, you know, there's episodes where he goes to like the Amazon and he actually does like the toad licking, except you find out that you don't actually lick toads. You just scrape off, you know, whatever they secrete, and then you burn yourself and you put that secretion into your burn, and that's how you get the high. And anyway, so just he's out there exploring all these different drugs and how they affect the body, and I always thought that was interesting. And then there's a more recent show, I think it's called Down to Earth with Zac Efron, and he goes around and, you know, he visits healing places like I want to do. One of the places that he was looking at recently was like in Iceland, where they had these hot springs, and I think the mineral content in it was so high, like the sulfur and the magnesium and stuff, that people were actually going there, and after 1 or 2 sessions of just soaking up in this hot springs, like their ailments like psoriasis and things like that were disappearing. So I'd like to do cool stuff like that too, right? So that's my vision for the show as I get better at well, presenting myself, right? As I get better at appearing on camera and maybe slowing things down, and I don't know, just the way I present the show through the structure of the show itself, how I, you know, go from topic to topic. There's lots of different things I have to work on. So again, I've got too many things popping into my head right now, and everything is just coming to a screech. But I have a grand vision for the show, and I'm just gonna keep plucking away at it until I'm in a place where I have the time, the skills, and the money to have it done right. And until then, I'm just gonna keep pushing through and doing these things. So what did I cover? I covered the kind of the why I started. I covered the shows and the episodes and the guests that I've had on in my journey, and I've kind of covered some of the struggles I've been having on. I'm looking for questions here. I'm not really seeing any questions come up, so I don't know. Maybe I'll wrap it up here. This was a fun experiment for me, doing this live first time. I kind of got a feel for it. I got to see what it's like. I'm confident that next time I go live, it'll be better. But yeah, all we got to do is keep going and keep doing the things until we improve, right? So just gonna check my notes, but yeah, we'll wrap it up here. I think it's getting Jim, what's next for Tripping Through Transformation, Jim? Well, I do have 4 guests coming on. So I'll be honest, I would much prefer talk to a person than talk to myself in front of a camera. I like to have a conversation. I don't like to get, you know, stuck in my own head. So my next guest right now, as it stands, is going to be Ruta. She's a mindset coach. She was my mindset coach, the second coach I ever had. And she also played a huge part in changing, you know, my mindset and the way that I see things and the way I approach life. So I'm going to have her on. Then I'm going to have Ben Smith. I don't have a set date for Ben yet. Ben has an interesting story. Ben wrote a book too that helped me tremendously. Because he talks about his life and his own struggles, and just his openness, you know, in the book made me realize, well, if this guy can be this open and raw, then I guess so can I. Like, he gets very raw and talks about private stuff that, you know, most people probably wouldn't be open discussing in public. So him doing so gave me the courage to open up, I guess, and even to open up to some of my coaches and mentors about things I'm not discussing with you guys here publicly right now, but that I might talk about in the future. But some of my struggles, some of my challenges, some of my bad habits, some of my vices, you know, he gave me the courage to open up and say, hey, I'm struggling with this. I'm doing these things I want to change. So I want to have him on and, of course, talk about the impact he's had on me. But hopefully, you know, he'll be able to have an impact on my listeners as well. And well, I'm not saying hopefully, I know he will. So Ben is coming. Who else do I have coming? I think I've got 2 more people. I have a gentleman named Thomas. He's out of Estonia, I believe. and Tama wants to be an organic. Well, he is an organic gardener, but he has a grander vision. He wants to have like a center, and he wants to host people and feed them healthy foods and stuff like that. And Tama and I connected about a year ago because he's also another type of coach. But I don't know. He and I seem to be connecting on a different level, just our own experiences maybe. And it looks like we might be working together in the future down the road. I'm not sure, but yeah, Tama's going to come on and we're going to talk about, I don't know yet. I haven't figured it out. And I may possibly, this only just popped up today, but somebody reached out to me today who is also from Fort McMurray, who I believe was a security guard during the fire. And she received, I believe, a public service award for the work that she did during the fire, during the evacuation. So I have to meet with her and we're going to try to figure something out. But that's what's next. And honestly, Jim, for me, you know, like I said, I've been honest. I feel like I'm not giving this podcast as much attention as I'd like to, just because I feel like life is overwhelming right now. But I do feel like this is an important step towards my ultimate goals. And I've discussed them in the past, but I'll share them again just for you, Jim. My ultimate goal is to keep developing this podcast, right? This is like a learning tool for me to build confidence, to develop my skills at storytelling, public speaking, and things like that. But I also want to become a public speaker. I want to share my story of, oh, you think I'm too hard on myself, Jim? Well, yeah, you're probably right. I've been told I have high standards. It's just, I have a vision for things, how they can be. And then my ability to make that happen aren't there. And so, yeah, I am hard on myself because I feel like I can never really achieve or materialize what I'm envisioning. That's so, yeah. But, yeah, so I want to keep building the podcast. I want to be a public speaker. Currently working on writing a book with another coach, Heather Andrews, Get You Visible. If you guys ever want to write a story or write a book, she's your person. The authoring has been a challenge. I'm not going to lie. It feels like I have the whole book in my head. Like I know exactly what I want to talk about, but when I sit down to actually do it, nothing comes up. It's like I have this just giant pimple building up, and it just needs to be popped so that I can get the content on the page. But I don't know. Like, again, I feel like I just got too much stuff on my plate right now. I'm bouncing between too many tasks and I can't focus on one thing. And it's just causing me to half-ass everything. Kind of like how I feel about this podcast right now. So yeah, I'm working on a book. And what else? Oh, the grand vision. That's what we were talking about. Yeah. So eventually I'd like to run and own. I mean, I don't have to own it, but it'd be nice. But I'd like to work for or run a wellness center, preferably one that has psychedelic assisted therapy. Right now, that's still not feasible in Canada just because of the laws and stuff. But I just want to have a place where people can come and gather and heal and rejuvenate and, I don't know, mend. So that's my goal. And then at the pinnacle, the very pinnacle, and this is an ambitious goal, and I know that it is, but I got to have something big to aim at, is that I would like to collaborate with Elon. And by collaborate, that could be in any capacity. Like maybe my business does business with his business, or he and I partner up somehow, or I don't know, just somehow I collaborate with him on ensuring the preservation and the mental well-being of our space travelers and colonists. My understanding is that Elon's vision is to colonize Mars. My vision is to ensure that the future generations have the tools, knowledge, and skills to prosper, and that we put them, like we set them off on the right foot. And I think that the people that we want to send, that we're going to send to Mars, we want to make sure that they have resilience and that they have, you know, that they're not going to crack under pressure, because they're going to be the ones who get us established there, right? They're going to be on a planet how many months away, like how many months away to travel back and forth, like totally disconnected from humanity, right? Nobody's coming to help them out if anything happens out there. So they have to be self-reliant. So they're going to need to be able to depend on themselves. And so I think it's really important that the people we send there have the right tools and mindsets to thrive and start the next generation, I guess. Like, I don't know if Elon's plans is to only use people that were born on Mars, or if he's going to, you know, immigrate people there or what, but that's a whole other conversation. But anyways, that's kind of my vision, and that's kind of why I'm doing Tripping Through Transformation. It's just, this is all just part of the growth and learning process. And I feel like this is just one of these things I have to do. It's to connect with people, to learn from people, to develop my skills, and to just get better and just keep taking one more step towards that next goal every day. So I hope that answered your question, Jim. With that, we're getting close to an hour. I think I rambled on long enough. I will obviously edit this. Like, once we're done live, I'm going to put it into my software. I'm going to chop it up and make clips, and I'm going to put timestamps at the bottom for people who don't want to have to watch the whole thing. They can jump around and see, just listen to their favorite moments. But yeah, I'm going to wrap it up. Thank you, Jim and Snowman, for tuning in. And to everybody else, appreciate you. Keep on doing what you're doing. Don't give up. And there's always better times ahead, man. Don't despair. So take care.